Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. You're listening to Wrestling Changed My Life.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Ladies and gents, boys and germs, welcome back to the podcast. It's Wrestling Changed My Life. This is your host, Ryan Warner. My guest today is Jared Lawrence, who is a national champion for the Minnesota Gophers, 4-time All-American, 4-time high school undefeated state champ. So yeah, this guy knows some wrestling. He's been in the trenches and lived to tell the tale, and he joins the podcast here for episode 41. Now, folks, before we get into the episode, quick shout out to our fan of the week, Rodney Chamberlain. Greatly appreciate you tuning in, Rodney. I can't look at this thing without thanking Rodney Dangerfield, but Rodney Chamberlain, you're a bad man. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Now, without further ado, let's take you to this episode with Jared, the Golden Gopher Lawrence. Now, when you were a kid, you had one of the most legendary careers in Idaho. I know your older brother was also a 4-time state champ, and you wrestled for one of the greats, Dan Taylor. Were your parents super involved in your upbringing? And if not, how did you get so into it?
They were involved in helping me when I needed help, right? Like, so my dad didn't have the knowledge that a guy like Dan Taylor had. So they just brought me to place A to place B. You know, if I wanted work, there was a lot of times so I grew up in the mountains, I didn't have a lot of TV. We ended up getting like cable when I was like a junior in high school. So when I was little, it was easy to get bored. And we had a small little wrestling room. So there was a lot of times that I just kind of went in there by myself, and we had this thing. We had one of the things that I loved doing was we had this bungee cord, right? That was strapped to the wall. And then we put a weightlifting belt on the other side, and I would just throw that on, and I would, stance and just penetrate, and it slingshots you back, but it's resistance training. And most of the time my dad would, hear me going in there, or sometimes I'd go up to him and say, hey, will you come just stand for me? And he would really just stand there and let me take shots on him. I'm not finishing any shots. You just, but I could hammer off probably 200 shots in probably like 15 minutes. And then it'd be done. And he'd be like, okay, good job.
And how old were you at this point?
I was probably around like that 11 to probably 14 age when I really started caring about myself, and wanting to be good.
So you were, man, the amount of reps you must have taken in that room, God only knows. And so you were that into it as a young kid.
Yeah, that was one of the greatest things that, like, Dan Taylor, it's funny, I mean, most people wouldn't know that name. It's funny that you do. But the motivational side of it, getting him to believe, in yourself and doing extra stuff for it. That was like, man, he did a really good job at it.
Do you have anything like specifically where he, like as a young kid, he gave a talk or something, or like this was one of his philosophies?
Dude, he talked to us daily.
Really?
I mean, there would be times that we would start practice and it wouldn't get going for 20 minutes because he would just sit there and talk. Motivational talks, like you would get amped up, man. We would be, it was really cool. It was one of his gifts, man. He was able to get every bit of anything out of everybody.
Wow, like a John Wooden type sage kind of coach, huh?
Yeah, yep.
Wow, that's awesome.
So, I mean, from a small town of Sandpoint, Idaho, where there's like 8,000 people, when he first started, just a background of him, because like nobody listening to the podcast will have any idea who he is, They started off with his son, his name was Zach Taylor. He wrestled for the Gophers, just 5 or 6 years ahead of me. But he was like the only guy that made it to state, and we had like 0 people in a crowd for wrestling, like a typical, like, okay, the families are the only people that were in there. So we had one guy that went to state and then had like 15 people on the stands. Fast forward 6 years and we were state champions, and we were putting like 1,000 people for a home duel, big home duel. Like the gym would be packed.
Holy cow.
It was just really cool, the transformation that it took in just that amount of time.
So this guy was just a doer, man. He just made it happen and had a way of kind of creating this energy around him.
Yep. Just getting people to buy in and really motivate people to actually work hard. So you had guys that started wrestling. I mean, granted, it's Idaho, so it's not like the greatest state. It's not bad, but it's not like, it's not Pennsylvania.
Right.
But you'd have guys that would start wrestling like in 8th grade, and they'd be state champs by seniors.
Man.
But they would be putting massive amount of time in. So we did like 2-a-days the entire year. Yeah, we had like 6:45 practice every single day. 6:45 to 8, and you had from 8 to 8:20 to shower and get ready for class.
And were the workouts like conditioning and strength in the morning and then wrestling at night, or what was the breakdown back then?
So he would go back and forth. So we'd probably do conditioning and strength, probably twice a week. Mm-hmm. And then the other 2 mornings, like on occasional, we got like Friday off. If we had like a duel on Thursday, he'd be like, all right, you guys can have tomorrow morning off.
Oh my God. I just love hearing stories about people who are just, so motivational, and you never even hear about these people, right? Is he still around? Is he still coaching wrestling?
He's not. No. He had a little bit of a falling out with like our AD. So the AD in Sandpoint was the basketball coach at the time. So they got like all the Friday, Saturday duels, and wrestling got like Tuesday, Thursday, and they battled a little bit. And so he took a leave of absence actually when his son was a senior to come out to Minnesota and help them out a little bit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Really to spend time with his kid to try to get him back on track where his son was like, as a sophomore, was ranked like number 2 in the country, and then like tore his ACL, and then had a hard time coming back, and then he finally got back, then he tore his other ACL. So it was one of those stories.
Gotcha.
But
okay.
the AD pretty much said, hey, if you're going to leave for this long a time, then you're not allowed to come back. So
got it. Okay. Now, when you
family first.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't realize that was kind of the Idaho to Minnesota pipeline, because your brother was obviously a 4-time state champ as well, went there, then you went there. So it's kind of random, Idaho to Minnesota.
Yep.
So that was
him and J-Rob are very close friends. Yep.
Let's spend a few minutes on that guy. I mean, I am doing a podcast documentary on Dan Gable right now. It's going to come out in the next couple of weeks. But obviously, J-Rob's a big part of the Iowa success in the 70s and 80s, Mark Johnson, those guys. And then J-Rob left and went to Minnesota, and maybe you know this better than me. Like, what was the state of Minnesota wrestling when J-Rob took over? Were they bottom of the barrel? Were they average? Like, what was it?
Yeah, I think they were maybe average. They had some good guys right away, and then just kind of it took them a while. I think before Jay, I wouldn't say bottom of the barrel, but definitely not top. And then when Jay got there, he had recruited some really good guys right away, but then they had some school issues. You have some other issues, but some really talented guys, and then it basically just climbed from there.
I mean,
yeah, he did an awesome job.
Awesome.
Another
job.
guy that's the same way. You're just motivational. Finds way to get out of you a little bit more. Now his way would be more, I would say, military based, right? Almost like that. I wouldn't say negative motivation, but it's that strict type of way to get everything out of you. So work for the right people, and some people that, when you get to college, you have a lot of people, and some it works for and some it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, well, he was in the military, and he Olympian in 19.
Everything's based on it.
Yeah. And did he go to Oklahoma State or Oklahoma? I can never remember.
Oklahoma State.
Which, man, think about this for a second. I mean, could you imagine Tom Brands hiring someone from Oklahoma State now and then someone from Michigan, which was the case with Gable hiring J. Rob and Mark Johnson back in the 70s. I think that's what's so cool about it. So what are some early encounters you had with J. Rob? Did you do the intense training camps as a kid?
I did. Yep. So my high school coach was very involved with Jay Robinson and his intensive camps. So there was a few times that Jay had major surgeries, right? So he would be out for 5 or 6 days. And actually my high school coach would take over his role. He would do all the motivational talks that J Rob does. But so my 8th grade year, I did the 28-day camp. And then my 9th grade year, I did the 10-day, the 14-day, 23 days of the 28-day, and then I went to Fargo.
Ooh, man, you had to be chiseled, man.
That was my summer.
What made you love it so
June
much?
6th, got back in August. Yeah, you know what? I loved it, man. I really did. It's probably a rare thing, but I had a lot of fun. And, you're hanging out with, college guys all the time. And I'd get a little bit more special treatment just because of who I was and who I knew. So I was actually in heaven, even though you're working your tail off.
Oh man. I mean, that's an understatement. Those camps, as a kid, I grew up in Western Illinois, and there's a lot of wrestling going on there, but once in a while you'd hear stories about a kid who went to the J-Rob camp, and before the internet, the rumors were insane. You would hear kids talking about how during the wrestling practices there was so much sweat on the mats, people would have to mop them all the time, which now obviously you can believe, but I mean, those camps were legendary at the time, and that was before the academy scene, so really you didn't have that. Now you kind of have that with the academy stuff all the time. Yeah.
I mean, the system is awesome. When you talk about changing lives, you should get Jay Robinson on a podcast, because that's his motto, that the camps will change you, and they will. And I'll tell you what, society now needs it more than ever, because when you go there, you have nobody holding your hand. You don't have mom or dad waking you up, making you breakfast. That's the whole point of those camps. You get yourself up, you get yourself from point A to point B. You have to be there. You have to be, you get the whole camp's based on a point system, right? So you get, you start off with, so many points, and you get docked points for if you're late or if you're not working hard enough. That's how they keep people to work hard, because the whole point is to graduate. Everybody wants the I did it shirt. You want it. And so if you, try to take it easy or slack, you got a run every morning. And if you're you're tired, and you try to, take it easy, boom, you get a negative, and you only can get so many negatives before you don't graduate.
See,
and late is a huge. Yeah. And so late, the points aren't common, how many points, he doesn't tell anybody how many points each positive and negative's worth, but you're allowed to give out as many negatives as you want as a counselor every practice, but you're only allowed to give out 1 positive per run and 2 positives per wrestling practice. And they basically will cancel each other out if you get too many negatives, and you got to get back on track a little bit. You can always work super hard and get a positive, but lates are a big deal. Those ones actually are 50 points. So If you show up and they say line up, you have 10 seconds to line up, and if your shoes aren't tied, you're late.
Old school.
You're
baby.
not in line. If you're not in line perfectly, you're out of line. You're late. You got to be single file, military. Boom, you're in. And it's amazing, because you learn. If you talk to people that go to those camps, man, every single one of them will be like, change me, change me, change me.
Yep. And it's not even the fact that you a kid who was a national champ or a Fargo All-American. It could be just a average wrestler.
Most of them are. Yeah, most of them are just average.
Right. That's what I remember from it. Yeah, because the guy who I knew who went was good, but not like a blue chip not even close to a blue chip.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Wow. And so, why do you think you loved this kind of style and work ethic? Because from what I read about you, your style was you're gonna go, and then in the third period, if you were trailing at that point, that's where you'd make up some ground, and you were just a worker.
I think it's just a combination of you are how you're taught, right? And I went from one coach that was motivational, and we worked really hard, and he thrived on that. Like, his motto was, I don't care what it is, we will never lose by getting outworked. They might beat us, but it's never going to be because, we're tired, basically. And I just went from one coach that went like that, and I went to another coach that went like that. So just my whole career, those are the coaches that I've had.
And did you seriously consider any other schools besides Minnesota coming out of high school?
I really didn't, to be honest. I went on other visits, and I tried to keep an open mind. But, like my brother was there, who were very close, like some family members do that. But like my brother and I, we still pretty much talk every day.
Yeah.
Just like I get in my car, I'm like, I'm kind of bored. I got to call somebody. I'll call Brett at work and see if he's available.
Yep. Yeah, my brother's the same way. Yeah.
So it's just, it was there, and I just had so many connections there, so it was easy.
And when you got there, they were kind of coming into their own. Becker was there. Kraft. I'm thinking of Kraft. Kraft was there, and he was kind of the first guy that the name I remember, and that's a little bit before my time. But was it a tough transition for you, or did you go right into it and feel right at home right away?
The transition part was just when you're really wrestling, like you just have to understand that you're wrestling men. Like when you talk about Kraft, I used to wrestle Kraft in that room, and he used to beat the tar out of me. And that was just the mentality of it. Like when you were a freshman there, which I don't, now you get so many people that are so talented young, but back then, it was rare for a freshman to All-American. It was just so rare. And like Crafty was the first one that was a 4-time All-American from Minnesota, but it didn't happen that often back then. And I just remember, you were like fresh meat when you got there as a freshman. And any of the upperclassmen, they just outsought the freshmen right away and just beat the tar out of you. Just over and over and again, just because you're not used to wrestling men, man. That's
right.
5 years difference, 4 years difference at that different level, man, was huge. The maturity was just such a big deal. So it didn't matter. You were just, trying to get a takedown the first, week, first month. Just come on, just give me a point.
Everyone we've had on says that, and it's like hard to, everyone hears that you don't score a takedown for your first couple of months in college, but it's hard to actually grasp what that means, because if you're not getting a takedown for your first month, that means you're going live, God knows how many hours and literally not scoring a single point. Whereas you came from Idaho, where you were undefeated 4-time state champ, Fargo All-American. It's a tough transition. I think that just shows the people who make it through that, kind of a mind of steel, so to speak. And Chris Bono talks about that because he came from Florida going to Iowa State, where there was a huge discrepancy, and he was really hurting for about a solid year, but said it was the most important year of his life, and that changed his life. So always curious to hear people's stories going into college, their first year or even their first couple months.
Yeah. Yep. My brother, I think he talks about, he didn't score a point until like a solid month in, like a first takedown, 1 month.
That's insane. Now, before you went on your run, wearing the maroon and gold, so to speak, you were on a couple junior world teams. I'm just curious, who were some of the guys on those junior world teams back then?
So like Lowney was on with me, Damian Hahn was on a team with me, Leroy Vega. There was 1 year that Damian and I and Leroy, who were all Minnesota people, were all on a junior world team together. We went to Australia. unfortunately, I had wrestled Luke Becker to make the team. That was the finals of the, junior world trials, and we were also roommates.
Wow.
So that made a very uncomfortable couple days, which, and most of the time Luke would beat me. So it was just, the luck of that particular match in practice. So,
man, Leroy Vega, I remember that guy from, I don't know if you remember this, but ESPN did a documentary in Iowa called The Season way back when.
Yeah.
And they showed Leroy Vega. I was terrified of this guy after this, but before the dual meets, he would like shave his head like he was going into battle, and he would battle Luke Eustace, who is a Minnesota guy, I think.
Yep.
I was terrified of that guy though from that documentary.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yep, they're all good people.
And so, man, when I look back in your college career, I just look at some of the rivalries you had with some of the greats at that time, Terapelli, Zadek. I mean, what do you remember about those battles with Zadek back in the day?
They were definitely rivalry. Like at the time, I mean, Iowa and Minnesota, like it was a true rivalry. Like it still sits in us this day. You know what I mean? I have to really try to be open-minded about it and that, but it's hard because it was truly like, life or death almost.
Like a hatred almost.
Made it awesome.
It seemed like
almost.
it was almost stronger than Oklahoma State.
But it was way worse. Yeah, way worse.
Yeah. Border states.
I don't even know why, but yeah, that's just the way it was.
I just feel like, both programs, you guys look at J-Rob as a mythical figure and then Iowa with Gable, and there's a lot of rumors that the breakup wasn't that good. So there's some lingering things there, but either way, it was awesome because Minnesota was on top of the time and they would do it right. They'd put the dual meet was a big deal, and they did the spotlight, and I think there was even like
and Iowa hated all that. They hated everything that we did. They were like, wrestling needs to be wrestling, and quit doing all this fancy stuff. Let's just get after it, which makes sense when you're Iowa and you can afford to do that. But when you're trying to build something, you have to make it, it's got to be fancy. That's what everybody wants, man. Like high schools, every high school should have basically a mat light.
No question.
And try to bring in people. You almost have to run it like MMA now if you want to get high school kids to the events that are not actual wrestlers. Like it's got to be dark. It's got to be, lighting. You're gonna have to show it up.
Well, you guys did the the WWF belts too, right?
Yeah. Yep. We had a couple actually duels that were awesome, man. At the Excel Center, at Target Center, like Jay did it right. He knew how to do a production.
And you think about now, that's commonplace, like what Flo does with Final X, but he was one of the first guys to do it, and that's what I love about Jay Robinson. He was an innovator in that sense. Turned all the lights out, really made it kind of like, to your point, an MMA type of thing.
Yep.
I mean, outside of the, outside of kind of the scores and highlights, like what stories do you remember about Jay Robinson that the average fan might not know about? Maybe something he would do at a practice or some, like the craziest workout you guys did. Does anything come to mind? I'm just so fascinated by him.
Yeah, I mean, everything was. Every workout was hard, but they all have the same mentality. So Marty Morgan was his assistant, who was basically brought up by him, and then you had this guy, Mark Schwab, who was also super, super intense and an extremely good motivator. Then you had Joe Russell, who was like the nice guy, but had more knowledge than anybody alive. So, I mean, back when we were there, it's so hard because everything was awesome, man. That coaching staff was really, really amazing. Like they all complemented each other really well. You had brains, you had knowledge, you had intensity. It was, we had a lot of really hard workouts.
And what year did you guys do the 10 All-Americans?
That was in 2001. Yep, that was our first year we won the national title, which was really cool because nobody stood out. You didn't have any spotlight. You had 10 All-Americans, and that was it.
Was there even a national champ that year?
Nope.
I didn't think there was. Okay.
No, we didn't even have a finalist that year. We had 6 guys in the semis, and we went 0 for 6 in the semis, and that's when Iowa Stan started saying 0 to us because we had zero people made the finals.
See,
that's why when we won, that's why we did the 10. So when we won, the whole arena started chanting 10.
That's what I'm talking about. People forget how nasty this rivalry used to be. You had the Iowa fans chanting 0. That is
I'm not lying.
Oh,
it was brutal.
Brutal. Oh my God, that is awesome. And that's an era when Iowa literally won every single nationals from 91 through 2000. So people were sick of those guys, right? And I like Iowa. I'm probably a Hawkeye fan first and foremost, but man, to have a team upset them, maybe not even upset them at that point, but would you consider it upset, or were you guys number 1 all year that year?
No, I don't think so. We were back and forth. I'm trying to think of we might have lost Big Tens that year.
Okay.
I don't know if I can put a finger on actually the Big Ten part of it, but it was going to be close back in. I mean, for sure, you had to definitely perform. There's no doubt about that. And it was in Carver Hawkeye, by the way.
Oh man,
that's where the Nationals were that year.
Oh man, that's awesome. So I'm thinking of, I don't know if that's the year TJ Williams wrestled Tony Davis or not, but those are 2 Illinois guys going at it in the finals. So I remember that one. I
wrestled Tony Davis a couple times.
Dude, that guy's a freak, huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
definitely.
Man. So talented. He, ironically, he and TJ Williams went to the same kids club, the Harvey Twisters, which is this dominant.
I'm very aware.
Oh, okay. I mean, you're deep in the circles. How could you not be? But dude, just a dominant club, and big fans of those guys. Now, your junior year, you guys also win the team title, but you're a national champion. And I read a quote that you said that got me just chills almost when I read it, but you said after you won, you couldn't believe that the climb actually worked and that, all the hard work actually paid off. So kind of before you got to that point where you won, going into the finals, your junior year, you're going up against what would be a future Olympian in Freyer. Where are you at mentally going in? Are you visualizing it? Are you hyping yourself up? Or are you staying calm?
You're trying to visualize it, I think, but I think for me, I was a calm guy. I tried not to get worked up. Now, every style is different, right? Some people would pace back and forth and warm up for an hour. It just kind of depends on what works for you. But I was definitely the guy that's, relaxed and just try to flow into it. I try to not think, try to get your mind basically in a state of almost like Zen, right, where you can react. I've always thought that if you have to think about it, you'll slow down by the time you think. So everything needs to be a reaction. You need to be able to basically go blank and just let your body react how it needs to react. Let it do its thing.
And so you would take that mentality into those matches, and if before a match, self-doubt started to creep in, or for example, Saturday when the nationals or the finals are at night, you have all day. If something were to creep into your mind, would you just try to eradicate it right away, or did you have any techniques for dealing with that? Because usually high performers have some type of technique they use.
Yep, and I don't know if I have a technique or not. You'd have to be aware of it and actually think about it and be like, okay, take this nasty thought, put it in a ball, and then throw it over there, or hit it with a baseball over there, to where you can almost visualize the thought getting placed into something and then discharged. That's kind of an easy way to get rid of it.
Yep. No, that's, it's just kind of, acknowledging it and then letting it go away.
Yeah. Instead of sitting there trying to just not pay attention to it. You have to actually for me anyway, it was you have to actually take the thought and almost see it, right? Try to visualize that nasty thought, and then, whatever. You can crumple it up like a piece of paper and throw it in the garbage, or, hit it or throw it and, get it out of there so your brain kind of sees it, and then you can move on.
Right. Now, after you won, had to be, as you said, the happiest moment of your life. Did you have any trouble refocusing yourself and getting amped up for the next go around, or resetting your goals on the next big thing after that?
Maybe a little bit, but I was a junior, so my senior year, I was still focused on doing it again, if possible. So like, I don't, maybe for a small little window of time there, but then you get right back into it.
Yeah.
I try not to think too much about that stuff, where you're just almost robotic, right? Go do your thing.
Especially when you're around so many good guys that you were. And then I just want to close with some few minutes on Pinnacle, because it's so exciting to see this academy. It's not, to me, it's way bigger than a club. It's an academy. You have a standalone building, 400 kids. I mean, the amount of guys you guys have put on a world team and girls is unbelievable. So after 2008, I've heard that you were running Pinnacle kind of on the side just to make money while training for the Olympics. And then after 2008, you decided to go full time with it. How did you get to the point where you're using other high schools to your own facility and growing to 400 kids?
So as soon as in 2005 to 2008, you're right. It was just a way to make some money and coach. And I had like Luke Becker, Matt Nagel, Mac Ryder, all these kind of, friends, U of M guys that we were working together. Damian Hahn was there for year one. We were just kind of, splitting the money, hodgepodging it, and then, going out. And then I started to think like, maybe this can work. Like, okay, do we want to get into college coaching? Maybe, but I had some friends that were coaching a lot, and, they started to tell me how many weekends they're, gone a year. It was like Tim Hartung was with Cale Sanderson his last year at Iowa State. And he said he was gone 37 weekends.
Holy smokes.
And I just was like, I don't know if I want that right now. I just don't know if that's what I want to get into that whole scene. I'd like to try this scene where you're, we're still gone on a time, but you're not gone 37 weekends. And so I started to think like, maybe it could work, and that's when Brandon Paulson was, around. He was training Deichler, so he was around the room a lot, and I was just fascinated really by his passion for the sport. So that's when I started talking to him. I was like, hey, would you ever think of, at the time he was helping Deichler out, who was a young, Olympian, and at the same time was running his dad's business. So he's just, like I said, a finance guru, numbers guru. And I kind of mentioned the idea to him, like, hey, what do you think? And he ran some numbers, and he's like, yeah, I think this can work. And to be honest, man, we have never looked back. It was truly the greatest move we did. And then, we just flow. It just works.
And then when did you guys end up building your own facility? Like, what was the breaking point where you were like,
year one?
No shit. Oh,
Year
wow.
one, 2009. Yep, 2009. That was one of the things we said. If we're going to do this and we're going to make this work, the kids need to be able to buy into it. And to buy into it, you can't have it at a high school. You can't have it at the U of M room. Otherwise, it's not their room. It's the U of M rooms that we're renting.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did it from year one. Now we just leave space. Like our first space was a total of 6,000 square feet. We had 2 mats, small little weight room right there. And, that way when the kids, when they're there, they it's their space. Like they get to say, hey, I'm going to go to Pinnacle. Like not that it's ours, it's theirs.
I've heard you say that, and I think that's interesting to think of, hey, this is the kids' space. And it makes sense because other sports have that, right? Elite, like gymnastics teams, they have their own facility. They're not going to the local high school. Like, why wouldn't wrestling have its own?
You
know?
Yep.
And so at that time, were there other schools besides Overtime and The Edge out in New Jersey doing this? Were there others you looked to for kind of advice at that time when you were first starting it?
Yeah, not many. I mean, really, it was really Overtime was who I was trying to model a little bit because that was the big school at the time.
Yeah, they were
so that
good.
was really all I had talked to. But yeah, there was there was definitely some other ones out there, and now it's awesome. Now I take good pride in people that are trying to start a club up, you know, and information that they want, because I use the same information. I had to talk to somebody and say, hey, give me some pointers, help me out here a little bit. And I'm super thankful for that. So when somebody calls me, like Chase Pammy called the other day, he wants to start a club out in Las Vegas. Kyler Sanderson called the other day. He's starting a club in Utah, just trying to like, hey, what are some ideas here that you did that, you know, I don't want to make mistakes. And I am all in of helping somebody out.
It's awesome to see. Just in the Midwest here, you have Seabolt in Iowa. In Chicago, they're legit 3 or 4 schools that are top caliber.
Yeah.
You guys in Minnesota, Akron in Wisconsin. It's unbelievable to see this, and it's so exciting. And obviously, that translates to success on the international scene. So, as we wind down, 3 quick rapid fire questions. The first one is, what advice would you have for someone starting a new club, or what are some 1 to 2 things you've really learned that you say you got to do this or you got to do that?
Well, it's actually that's going to be a hard question, because everything plays into it. Like, you have your population base. Like, one of the things that we have to try to do to get kids to the best. I mean, that's basically, if you want your club to succeed, you got to find a way to get them better. So one, they got to buy in. They got to buy into whatever you're selling, man. Whatever it is, the kids got to buy into it. 2 is you got to have the right groups. You can't have a, 6-year-old working out with a high school kid. You can't have, 1 practice. You can't have almost 2 practices. You can't have a 6-year-old working out with a good 10-year-old. You have to be able to split your groups up to where each group can grow in the same direction for everybody. So like for us, I mean, we basically, up until this year, which we changed just a little bit, we've had 4 different youth groups. We have pre-elite 1, 2, 3, and then our elite.
Wow.
So we have 4 different groups that are all the same, so that each practice can run efficiently. Otherwise, you're too fast for one, too slow for the others, and it just doesn't grow. It just is hard if you only have 40 kids all together. You got to find a way to split up, 15 kids got to go here, and it's just not as, you're running more practices than you want.
Right. Man, that's crazy to think you have 4 youth practices. Man, that's just awesome. And the second question is, this is just me being genuinely curious versus talking about a trending topic, but why do you think anyone would have a negative perception of the RTCs? Because I just can't fathom it. But like, what's your take on the RTCs? And we don't have to get political. I'm just curious, gut response to that. What do you think about it?
I think in general they're good, right? I mean, it's good. The only drawback I have to the RTCs is I actually think about the kid that doesn't qualify. You know what I mean? So the guy that takes, and I don't totally know what all the qualifications are, because I know they were coming out with new ones, and they were going to go just freestyle based, which I think is definitely a little bit better if you can get on the perfect scene. But before it was high school based. So what about the guy? So top 4 were able to go to the RTC practices. Well, what about the guy that's 5th? He's 1 point away from beating the 4th place guy, and now that guy gets to go and work out with college kids, as many times, 3 days a week. Well, of course, that guy is going to get better than the guy that took 5th. He's got no shot. If the 4th place guy is working out with, college athletes getting his butt kicked by college guys. I mean, when I think about how much I grew my redshirt year, that's basically what those guys get. You know what I mean? So that's my only kickback on it. I love what it's doing for our international people. I love what it's doing for that other side of it. But it's either I don't know how to make it fair from those standpoints. But that's what I worry about. Is like, gosh, that guy was 1 point away, and now this other guy gets so many benefits. Well,
especially, I don't know about Minnesota or Idaho, but in Illinois, the discrepancy between the AA and the single A division now there's 3, but back when I was doing it, there was only 2, was unreal. So like the 5th place guy in AA probably could have won single A. And for the fact that he can't go to the RTC, whereas the top 4 in single A could go, I never even thought about it like that. I don't even think about high school with RTCs. Honestly, I forget about they can go.
Yeah, that's the kicker part, or even it's not really fair. I'm surprised the universities have actually kept it going, just because I remember when I was a senior freestyle coach running the RTC for up until last year. And so we'd have to go to meetings. I'd have to go to a summit meeting out in Colorado Springs and talk about all this stuff. And I remember Jamel Kelly, when he was at Stanford, he went in to set up an RTC, and they were like, you can't do this. This is completely against compliance. There is no way we're allowing this.
Right.
So now it's totally unfair for him. Like all these other people, like I talked to a buddy of mine at Rutgers, and he's like, we don't even really have to travel much for recruiting. It's awesome. He's like, we got so many kids in our RTC that it's like we don't have to travel as much as they used to.
So Stanford won't allow an RTC?
Yeah, I don't know if they would now. That was a few years ago. But yeah, he went in and was like, hey, all these people are doing this. We got to set one up. And they shut it down. So I'm surprised like those colleges didn't be like, wait a second here. Imagine a football team, right? A football program that can have high school. Imagine Alabama.
I was going to say
and
that.
They
Nick
can
Saban.
Now have, yeah. And now they can have all these high school kids come in and like, I wonder if this kid's any good. Hey, why don't we just have him take a couple hikes? You can't do that.
Right.
But in the wrestling world, not only can you do that, but like, hey, let's put that guy with this guy over here who's national champ, and let's see how he fares.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, he actually did pretty good. We need to make sure we get that guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
yeah.
As far as that aspect, I'm not a college person with it, so it doesn't matter to me. But those are I love what it's doing for our international level. It seems to be working. Like the U.S. is awesome, doing awesome right now, and I think that international experience is growing. That would be my take on it, is the fairness side for the poor guy that's 6th, 7th, 5th.
Yep.
And I think they're changing that. I think the new rules are changing to where it's like Fargo based. You're a state champ for freestyle and Greco, or you're a Fargo All-American.
Got it.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, that does. I never even thought that a school wouldn't allow it, but if that's the case, man, you are really in trouble. I'm also surprised that college coaches can still coach Fargo, but who knows what that seems a little nutty though to me as well.
Again, yeah, crazy, right? Just a different like wrestling. Who cares?
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen in football.
No, God no. But I think whatever makes the kids better, I'm all for. And obviously, why wouldn't you want to have a college coach on your Fargo team? So I'm all for it. It's just kind of ironic to look at other sports. Last question, Jared, as we wind down here, I ask everyone this is, if you look back on your life, how would you say wrestling has changed your life? And what are some of the core values and principles you use daily from our great sport here? Yep.
Well, like I have 2 boys that wrestle, and granted, it may not be their sport. I hope it is, only because I will see them a lot more. I'll see them at night as they, progress into Pinnacle. But even if they don't, like I kind of try to tell them, I was like, it does not have to be your sport, but you are going to wrestle. And it's really just for the value you get on it. I have not found another sport that you get the same values out of it. It's just amazing, man. And I think the best thing is the humility side. And I try to talk to our Pinnacle kids about it all the time, because everybody's so worked up over the wins and the losses, right? The losses, they hurt so bad, and some people take it hard. And I try as much as I can to preach to them, like, it's not about that. It's the humility side that you're going to get from it is one of the greatest things that you will get. Being able to fail and jump back is the biggest thing that I think you will actually get from wrestling, because not everything's going to be perfect. Life is not going to be perfect. You're going to get beat down, and that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can learn to deal with it, I mean, I know, gosh, here's an example. I was talking to my neighbors, right? And one of them was like, they're engineers around here, so they're smarter than me. And he was on a team of engineers, and they were working for like Medtronic, and these kids had spent a few months not kids, but young adults spending a few months on a project or whatnot, and they have to present this project to a board, and the board basically shot it down. And these people were so pissed that they shot down a project that they were working on. Like half of them quit. They just quit. They're like, they can't do that. They just quit because they couldn't handle the defeat side of it. They couldn't handle that humility. There's going to be a time when you're going to be working and you're going to have a boss and he's going to jump down your throat because you did something wrong, and you're going to have to be able to handle it. You're going to have to be able like, you know what? You're right. I screwed up. How do I get past it? How do I get better? That's how you're going to survive. That's how you're going to thrive in life, is by taking the criticism and using it, So that's actually, for me, like my kids, they hate to lose like any kid, I'm like, dude, this is actually the greatest thing you're going to get from it. And you have to be able to bounce back. You have to be able to, lose and bounce back. And it's happened to me. Like my college year, my year, we had 10 All-Americans, I did the whole semi-slide twice, man, where it was like my dreams were crushed. My sophomore year, I had just beat Alex Terapelli in the
Big Tens. You were OW of the Big Tens, right?
Yep. I had just beaten Terapelli in the Big Tens, and I wrestled him in the semis, and it just didn't go. It was one of those things where it just didn't go my way, and it crushed me so bad I never recovered from it. You have to be able to recover.
And especially when the one thing I love, obviously I love the whole thought of humility is huge, and self-reflection is consistent with every guest we have, but especially when you've done literally everything you can and it still doesn't go your way. That's the breaking point there.
Yep.
Awesome.
That's the biggest thing that you'll get from wrestling, I think. I mean, you get the work ethic, you get the discipline. Like it's ridiculous. And just no other sport than I know that will come with it, because your self-sacrifice is so big because it's you versus a team. It's just on the line. Yep.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you so much, Jared. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you this morning. Best of luck to you this upcoming season, man, and have a great day. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's the end of this episode, but definitely not the end of the show. For more episodes, please go to wrestlingchangemylife.org. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a star rating. Show the love, baby. Show the love. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. Peace.